She was dying in the open sun, right there by the fence where the cattle usually stood chewing grass. Dust clung to her skin, turning it gray. Her breath came in ragged pulls, and one leg was soaked dark with blood that had dried and cracked. There was no shade, no help, no one but a ranch that didn't care whether she lived or died. And the worst part, someone had left her there on purpose. Ever Hale saw her and knew one thing immediately: if he walked past, she wouldn't see another sunset. He was 47, had buried friends, horses, even a brother who bled out slower than this girl was now. That memory hit him hard and fast, killing any careful thought he might have had. She was huge for a young woman, tall, broad-shouldered, long-limbed, a frame built like the open country itself. No more than 19, and yet she carried the strength of the land in her body. Her rough hide dress was torn, caked with dirt, split along the thigh where the wound had opened her flesh. Flies hovered, waiting. Ever didn't shout. He didn't ask questions. He dropped to one knee in the sun, boots grinding into dry earth, and set his hands on her shoulders to keep her from toppling. Her eyes snapped open, black and wild with fear and pain. She tried to push him away, but there was nothing left in her arms to resist. Her body shook, not from cold, but shock. He tipped a mouthful of water from his canteen to her lips. Just enough to keep her conscious. She coughed, swallowed, stared at him like she couldn't decide whether to scream or bite. Everett didn't explain himself. That was his first mistake. He looked at the wound, knew how deep it was, and felt time closing in. Infection in this country didn't wait. Sometimes it began before a man finished praying. He pulled his knife, steel flashing in the sun. Her eyes locked on it. Ever grabbed the edge of her torn dress, cut a strip of hide, and leaned in to bind the wound. Then she panicked. One wrong move in this place could turn help into a fight for life. She cried out, jerked away, digging her heel into the dirt. To her, this wasn't rescue, it was a stranger over her body while she couldn't fight back. In her eyes, that made him the danger, not the blood. Ever felt the sick drop in his gut. He'd acted on instinct, not sense, not respect. Her voice, low, rough, and steady, cut through the heat. You'll regret this. Not shouted, not begged, stated. Her name was Nia, and he didn't know it yet, but he'd hear it in his head for a long time. Everett froze. He set the knife down slow, visible, and backed his hands away from her leg, palms open and empty. I'm stopping the bleeding, he said, quietly, plainly. No excuses, no explanations. It didn't matter anymore. She pushed herself upright, teeth clenched, blood dripping down her calf, eyes fixing his face in memory. Then she turned and staggered away from the ranch, heading toward the low rise behind the fence, never looking back. She moved like someone trained to stay in the saddle no matter what her body said. Ever watched her go, realizing she was heading for the hills as if she had somewhere to report. He stayed on one knee long after she disappeared. The sun was still high. The fence hadn't moved. The horses hadn't spooked. But the land didn't feel the same anymore. He told himself the bleeding would slow. That she was strong. A woman built like that didn't fall easy. Still, his hands shook when he finally stood. Ever had lived long enough alone to know when the air changed, not weather, not heat, something quieter, the kind that settles before trouble decides its shape. He walked back to the barn slow, like the land might be listening. He didn't follow her, didn't call out, didn't saddle a horse. Chasing someone who didn't want to be followed was how men ended up dead, undiscovered. He busied himself with chores he'd done 1,000 times. Checked the water trough. Ran his hand along the fence post. Counted cattle he already knew were there. None of it stuck. His mind kept pulling back to the moment, the knife flashing, her eyes when she said, "You'll regret this." Threats had meaning in this land, but that wasn't a threat, it was a warning. Night fell. The ranch felt smaller. Stars came out sharp and cold, scattered like nails. Every sound felt like footsteps. Everett ate without tasting. Left the lamp low, not hiding, just careful. Horses shifted in the corral, snorted, stomped, then went still. He lay back and stared at the ceiling beams. Sleep came in short pieces, broken by wind and the weight of darkness. Before dawn, he woke. No dream, no noise, just that feeling again, the land holding its breath. He stepped outside. The horizon was dark, but not empty. He couldn't see riders yet, but felt eyes pressing on the ranch, the way you sense someone behind you before turning. He didn't reach for his rifle. Reaching for a gun could turn a bad morning into a short life. When the sun finally broke the edge of the land, he saw them. Not counted, but felt, 10, 20, then numbers became irrelevant. Riders on the hills east, west, and straight ahead, scattered yet deliberate, silence carrying. They weren't raiding. Raiders hit fast, hard, noisy. This was different. A message. Shapes became clearer, spears, rifles, men sitting easy in saddles, as though they're all mourning. Then she came down from the ridge behind the others, tall, unmistakable, riding like she belonged there. Her leg was bound, clean. She didn't look at the ranch. She looked at him. And then he understood, the story she carried hadn't just survived, it had brought 300 men to stand silent around a quiet ranch at sunrise. Ever stayed where he was, hands low, heart steady by will. He remembered the way she'd looked at him in the grass, and wondered if the worst mistake wasn't cutting her dress, but assuming saving someone was the same as forgiveness. The sun rose, the riders stayed. Next move wasn't his. The first rider broke from the eastern ridge. Older. Experienced. Sat a saddle with weight and balance, no tension. Stopped far enough to make neither man reachable without purpose. Everett nodded once, an acknowledgement more than greeting. The old man spoke a few words back toward the ridge. Nia translated. Everett listened carefully. The man pointed, nodded at the spot in the grass where she had lain. Everett nodded. Yes, that was where it happened. The old man made a small cutting, binding gesture. Everett didn't speak, there was nothing to say without making it worse. Nia rode down the slope again, mounted. She stopped at the same measured distance. Her leg held, the binding clean. Everett felt both eased and tightened. She stood in the sun, solid as the land, just steadier now. My father says this is not punishment. This is learning, she said. Everett nodded. Learning cuts both ways, he said. You did not leave, she said. Most men would. Leaving would make me guilty of something I did not do, he said. She studied his face. You did something, she said. Just not what you think. The edge softened slightly, but only slightly. They stood together under the sun, aware that every word carried. When I was hurt, I was afraid. Not of dying, of being small, she said. I moved too fast, he said. I saw blood and nothing else. You saw a problem. I felt like the problem, she said. Ever understood then why the watching mattered more than talking? This wasn't about yesterday's moment in the grass anymore. The silent audience, the eyes on the ridges, mattered more than any exchange of words. The old man mounted and left. The riders on the ridges stayed, settled, some dismounted, some shifted. Fires did not appear. But the message was clear, they were staying. Everett stood in his yard, sun climbing, feeling the weight of unseen eyes. Nia looked at him once more. We will watch. We will see what you do next, she said, turning her horse back up the slope. The old man followed. Only when they disappeared from the valley floor did he breathe. Alive for now. But this wasn't over. Being watched was one thing. Being tested was another. The first full day of watching was the hardest. Nothing happened, yet every action was counted. Everett fed the horses, checked fence posts, drew water, poured carefully, moved deliberately. Staring was the same as challenging. Silence had weight. By mid-morning, Nia came down again, dismounted, standing at the same distance as before. Her leg held. The binding clean. She was steady. "You stopped the blood," she said. "Yes," he said. "You do it fast." "No talk," she said. He nodded. Eyes stayed locked. She glanced back at the ridges, then said, "He watches what you do when nobody pushes you, not when men surround you, but when you think you are alone." Ever realized then the truth, the watching mattered more than the talking. This was learning in the harshest way, silent, deliberate, and heavier than any raid.